Hey guys, so this is going to be a quick review of my thoughts on the new Creality Ender 3 3D printer. I'm quite new, as in this is my first machine, so not that much knowledge on it to be fair, but all the more better really. So I've had this for about a week now, and on the most part it's fantastic. Needs a little bit of intuition in putting it together. The instructions are fairly helpful, but they don't, you know, if you struggle putting IKEA furniture together, then you'll perhaps struggle a little bit with this, but otherwise it's fairly easy, and you can figure it out. Just a couple of things you've got to look out for when you're putting it together. These vertical struts tend to want to sort of flay out a little bit. Something's not 100% true down at the bottom, but it does all pull together, and if you can see, I'll just do the Z-axis. That's one thing you can do to make sure everything's sort of true when you put it together, is make sure the Z-axis goes up nice and easy by turning the stepper motor down at the back. And that will show you if you've got any issues or stiff points. What I did first was, before I sort of bolted everything together and put everything on the gantry, tested these individually, just make sure that they ran freely up and down, because you can adjust them. So for example, if you look down here, lighting's a bit crap, apologies, you've got this sort of, I'm not sure what size it is, but it comes with all the tools you need. But essentially what that is a large nut with a, I don't know, is it concentric? Basically an offset sort of pin going through it. So as you turn that, the shaft sort of oscillates around. So if you imagine the shaft sort of moves around in a circular motion, it pushes the wheel sort of to and then brings it back away. So that's how you sort of tension the wheels on this upper strut, and same for the other side as well. So this has got the exact same nut here. So before you sort of bolt everything up, make it a sort of bit easier and get a head start by just making sure they're okay. And then another thing was, make sure this, see, this is your extruded aluminium bar, and then it bolts to this sort of laser cut sheet steel that the rollers are actually fixed to, and that sort of bolts to the extruded aluminium by these two pins that are bolted from the other side. So make sure that's level when you put it on. There's a little bit of play in it, so you can sort of quite easily, as I did at first, it sort of sloped slightly up, and that meant that one wheel spun freely, which you can't see so much now, but they sort of spin on against the shaft, so there's just a right amount of tension there. You want to be able to spin them. You don't want everything sort of clamped up too tight. For anybody who's built one before, I'm sure you'll know, but for newcomers and such, or anybody dealing with this sort of, I think this was pretty unique to Creality, although I think there's a couple of others perhaps copying it now. TiVo, I think, is one. So yeah, you want to make sure that everything, there's no play, but everything sort of moves up and down nice and freely. What else? So this wheel and the V-slot arrangement is exactly the same for the you can see X-axis. So yeah, as you can see there, the bed sort of rolls down the channel. Now this is a sort of bit of a weak point for me, personally. The arrangement was, so you've got two wheels that side, both with the concentric sort of nuts, so you can adjust the tension actually that the wheels put against the V-slot. Now on this side there was two wheels but I've taken one off, and the reason was because they weren't directly across from each other. So one side you've got 2 wheels, the other side you've got 2 wheels. So they weren't directly across, they were offset. So I could have played around with it a little bit more to see if I could have got everything lined up. But when it came, that first wheel was at an angle. It'd been tightened up against the V-slot, but it was causing the bed to tilt. So that back spring all the way over, focus, the back right hand corner was fully compressed, and then these sort of the front ones were like quite sort of high up in comparison. So I realised that I'd got no adjustability. So I sort of basically went about moving the limit switch first to sort of raise the stopping point up. But then I decided to take the bed off, which is quite easy. Just fully unscrew these nicely formed big wheels. Took the bed off, and I could see that the actual carriage was running out then. So then I sort of went about levelling that and sort of plumbed it all back in. So I've just got one wheel this side, and it seems to be working fine. It's quite stiff. There's no play, or very little. Only play is what you sort of get in the actual rubber wheels, I guess. You know, there is a slight sort of play, and there was before, to be fair. So I haven't sort of made it any worse or any better in that regard, but it does run nice and true now. So that's a bit of an issue. What I would personally like to see, I mean, it's not so bad on this because it's relatively small bed, 200 by 200 by 250mm high. So it's not the biggest bed, but I think it would have been better really with 2 of these further apart, with wheels perhaps either just 2 or 3 on the inside pushing out, 2 or 3 on the inside pushing out, and I think that would have probably give it a much sort of sturdier sitting. And the reason for that is because the bed itself is very good out the box. Now typically when I was sort of reading up on 3D printing and watching other YouTube videos, you know, everybody sort of seems to struggle with getting prints to stick. Now with this bed, it's the opposite. Essentially what you have trouble with is getting stuff off it. Everything sticks to it that well. I don't know if I've got some prints somewhere where I could show that, where it's bloody pulling it apart and stuff because it doesn't want to come free. So what you have to do is you have to fight with it to get everything off the bed, to be fair. And in doing that, you're sort of pushing and pulling on the bed, and you can knock it out to true. So you'll be prepared to sort of do quite a bit of bed levelling quite frequently. It's not too bad, to be fair. You can easily check that by just going on the machine settings, homing it, and everything will find its home. And then you can just basically either disable the stepper motors in the menu or turn it off, and just basically, without moving the Z-axis, just you can slide this across the bed. Of course it'll be down here, sort of almost touching, and you can see and hear if it scrapes, and then you'll know it's been knocked out of true then. But other than that, that's really the biggest point for me, is just this bed. I think personally I might probably be better off going with a sheet of glass with the clips, because at least that way then I can remove that and then fight with it elsewhere. Although there is another option, which I used a couple of times, which was to use hairspray. A lot of people use that to actually aid the print with sticking. But in my case, I used it to basically put a layer on, and I was assuming that the hairspray would be a weaker force to break than the actual adhesion to the bed itself, and that was true, to be fair. But I got a little bit greedy, I put too much on and then nothing was sticking, so I had to clean it all off. And for the last few prints, I've just been printing directly onto the bed. So that's, I think, more or less it. I seem to have dropped on a really good filament just by chance. I bought the printer off Amazon. I got it for £169 next day with Amazon Prime, and I bought 2 rolls of filament. The one I'm currently using is this yellow PLA from 3D Printz Ltd. It's a UK based company, and they seem to be orientated around affordable filament, but really great quality. So they sort of promise the tolerance of 0.03 mil or something like that, which is beats the industry standard at 0.05 or something like that. But anyway, personally, I would advise to check them out. Reasonably priced. I think I paid possibly about £21 for a kilo, 1.75 mil, and no troubles with it whatsoever. I switched to a green one I bought at the same time. I thought they were the same brand, to be fair. I can't remember what that one was called, but it was called like a premium filament, just out of China, and I paid, checking back on it, about £16-17 for it. So it was a bit cheaper than this stuff, but I wasn't getting good prints at all. Basically, what was happening was it was pulling it through the extruder, and then the feeder cog or whatever was just churning it up. So I had to periodically clean that out because the little teeth get sort of compacted with the filament, and then that makes it easier to slip. So I tried bumping the temperature up by 10 degrees from 200, which this stuff works great at, to 210 or 11, and still no difference. And to show you that, I've got something I sort of made here. So you can see sort of under extruding on parts. Yeah, just not great really, which I was disappointed with because I left this printing overnight, and this was like a 12-hour piece. Its sort of dimensions are fairly sizable. 10% infill. But yeah, so I made that for the good woman, just a pot stand for some, I don't know, something with nails anyway. So yeah, so I just basically immediately switched back to this yellow stuff, and since ordered £70 worth of filament from 3D Prints. Got some nice stuff, some crystals, clears. This is all PLA, and what else? Oh, colour changing, so it changes with heat. So I'll perhaps make a little video on that if that's any good. But so far this yellow PLA has just been fantastic, and I think I was just lucky to drop on a quality filament from the bat, to be fair, because there's a lot of cheap shit from China. So anyway, yeah, I'll go through a few things I've printed. Oh, just before we go into that, so the heated bed. So the heated bed heats up really, really quickly. It's fully, basically, underneath. It's heated right the way to the edges. The filament heating filament sort of runs the full length of the bed. Heats up really quickly. You know, the sort of, I think to 50 degrees it takes just a matter of minutes. Same with the extruder to get to 200. That sort of, you know, gets up there fairly quickly. So that's pretty good. What else? I think that's probably it, to be fair. Just just recap. Just like I say, keep a watchful eye when you're sort of putting it together. Make sure everything runs freely. I did have an issue with the Z-axis. Sort of put it through this brass fitting here, and it was running out quite a bit, and I had to force it into the coupling at the bottom. Which you might be just tempted to do, just force it in, happy days. But what I was finding is, as it got sort of lower or higher, it was getting tight. So there's some screws here which shouldn't be tightened up. There should be a bit of play in there, and I just sort of played around with them until everything ran freely, and now everything does. Can turn it fairly easy. So I'm happy with that. Oh, and belts. Yeah, just be aware when you're sort of building it up with the belts. They tend to sort of run close to the actual frame. So I mean, this one I keep moving it over, but I don't think this bolt's tight, so it's pulling it in slightly. Of course, this is the shorter, only by a fraction route because it's at a slight angle. That's perhaps something I'll look into to try and keep it sort of true. So yeah, naturally it just wants to slide over, brings it closer to this. There is some adjustment. I've got it pretty much maxed out, and it's close, but it's not touching, so I'm happy with that. And the same with this one. So for this one, I've had to sort of get it to go under again because this nut and cap screw aren't sort of tight. There's a bit of play, and it pulls this bearing over, this pulley wheel, and of course it wants to pull the belt just inside it. So if you can see straight on, see I've got it sort of pulled down, so it keeps it within the channel. So everything's running fine, but yeah, just as you build it up, just go careful. But once it's set up off the bat, it's fantastic. So the first thing I printed was the STL file that come with it, which is this rather cute looking dog. And I mean, as soon as it printed this, it took quite a while, to be fair. I think it's at sort of 0.1 layer height. I don't actually know because the file just came on the SD card. And I mean, sort of, I don't know, I think the camera sort of makes it look slightly worse than it is, but in the flesh it's really good, and you can barely see any of the actual layers. But it's yeah, the detail on it was just pretty good, to be fair. I was happy with that. There's a bit of warpage on the bottom. If I had to set it down flat, yeah, it's sort of slightly bowed out on the bottom. I don't know if the heated bed was on, because they say like you don't need to use a heated bed for PLA. However, when you don't use it, be prepared for warping. I think you can just sort of see end on how that pore sort of lifted up. This front right pore. So, but yeah, other than that, it printed pretty good. So I started using Craftware slicer. And I did a benchy. I don't know, I've got one here, but that's not the first one I did. So the first one I did was a little bit. I could see for the most part the detail was great, but I got all this sort of stringing, bit of a spider's web. That was sort of a bit stringy down there, and like I say, the hole down the back was a little bit stringy. You can't just see with the camera. So I could see for the most part that it was there, but of course that stringiness was ruining it. So I had to sort of learn about retraction settings and faff around with them. But then the next one I did, which was this one, was a hell of a lot better, and damn near perfect for me, to be fair. I see a lot of other people on YouTube saying that they're happy with it, and I look at it and think, bloody hell, it looks a bit rough, but genuinely I am happy with that. It's yeah, no real little bit of patterning. This was done at 0.1 layer height. It took, I don't know, probably about 3 hours or something. But yeah, it's overall it looks pretty good, considering I'm no expert. I don't really know fully what I'm doing. I'm still learning. But yeah, for me that looks pretty good. A few other things I've printed. So this is just something I designed in Fusion 360. New to that as well, so put a logo in there, traced around it, extruded it, and sort of put this sort of disc around it. Quite simple, but you know, just learning as I was going, to be fair. Sort of took inspiration from them maker coins everybody makes. So yeah, that was that. Of course, I designed this in Fusion 360 as well. Fairly simple. Like I say, in hindsight, it was simple, but for me, I was just learning as I was going. But there's plenty of videos on YouTube to sort of guide you in the direction. And you can usually, if you want to do a specific thing, you can usually find somebody doing something along the same lines. This is something else I designed, which is eventually going to be just a overly designed filament holder, basically. Just plain, with both the Fusion 360 and the printer and whatnot. But I mean, there's a lot simpler filament holders. You get the ones that just sort of sit on the floor and they've got some bearings in, and the outer edges of this just sit and roll in it, which is fantastic. But I just wanted to make something that I could use and sort of just justify it to a degree. So some of the things I printed. So this is my most recent one. I did this overnight. So this is off Thingiverse, which is a tolerance tester. So yeah. So what have we got? So we've got 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5, 0.25, and 0.05. Now, I would have liked the sort of intermittent sort of between 2 and 1, the 0.15. But for this test, for me, it didn't really matter because I only got so far. So I was trying to hold the camera on the day to do it. So what have we got? So 0.5, half a mil tolerance. Plenty of play in there, not a problem. Didn't have to unstick it or anything. Same with 0.4, same with 0.3. Plenty of play. When I got to 0.2, that seemed pretty solid down the middle. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. I got to 0.1, she's stuck in there. And that one actually, it sort of broke free, but only half of it broke free. I don't know if the camera's sort of picking it up, but there's a definite gap all the way around. And I think my main issue is, if I look at the bottom, they all seem pretty fused together. The 0.25, the 0.1 and the 0.2. So I think it's the first few layers that have done it on them ones. I think, genuinely think that if the first few layers weren't there, were in that sort of fused position, then I might have had half a chance, to be fair, because it's broke off sort of past the halfway point, and I can still see a visible gap all the way around. Not for the 0.2, which is a bit odd. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. 0.25 as well. That's you can really see that gap all the way around. And if you look at the actual bits that have broke out, there is no sticking points on that whatsoever. Completely free of anything. You can see it sort of past the halfway point. So while that's a 0.25, you can see again that's past the halfway point. And that broke off. That's a 0.2. So it's not the smallest one out of the bunch, but that broke off the highest. And like I say, that's the one that looks fused more or less halfway down. So I think 0.15 is the general, you know, the acceptable sort of best. 0.2 should have been free. I'm not sure why that one failed so badly compared to the 0.1, like I say. So that's that. But I'm still tweaking settings, and I'm still learning. This is I think just a torture tower or something off of Thingiverse as well. I did this because I was getting some issues in something I printed. I can't just think what it was. But yeah, getting sort of slight bulging on the corners to the point where it's starting to look like a bit of a Nazi symbol, if anything. But overall, I mean, you know, quality. I think this might be 0.2, 0.15 layer height. It's not too bad. Again, if you look straight down, just see just bulging at the corners, which is annoying me. I don't know if I can improve that or anything, but then I printed this. So again, this is off Thingiverse. Kind of messed this up halfway through because I've got a lamp just there, and that Fallon actually hit the bed. So it's a very sort of precise point all the way around. If you can just see, got a slight offset where it moved the bed, and that caused some things to fail over here. You can see on the pyramid as well, that sort of definite indent, sort of almost 2/3 of the way up. The overhang, 10 degrees. Sorry, it's not focusing. So 10 degrees, so just starting to sag there, but it still made it, still did it. Same with the, Jesus Christ, focus. So same with the bridging, made it. A little bit of sag on this this larger end one. Trying to get it focused. Again, we've got that sort of bit of a dodgy part, more or less at the top of each strut. So knock the printer bed, sort of no good. This is probably one of the messier prints I've done. It's actually quite fine when, I mean, you know, it's sort of a little bit blobby. I'm not quite sure how to sort of stop the blobbiness. I don't know if the retraction settings, or I need to calibrate the feeder. Not quite sure what to do. Play with the temperature settings maybe. But for the most part, it's you know, it's really good, and I can't complain. These sort of issues is just any issues I think you're going to have on any printer. So this is just a box I just made in Fusion 360, but then I printed it sort of in vase mode in Craftware, so it's just a single layer thick, so it should be 0.4 mil. Sorry, 0.04, is it? No, it's 0.4, isn't it? 0.4 mil width, it's a 0.4 nozzle that comes with it, and to be fair, it printed it very well. Corners are nice and sharp. I think there's just one corner where there's a bit of a build up, and that's because I think vase mode in, I don't know, is it Cura? I'm not sure. It sort of does like one continuous spiral apparently, but this one seems to sort of draw the square and then come round to this corner point, step up, or sort of offset into the cube slightly, step up, and then print. So one corner's got a slight sort of ridge in it, but all the others are pretty well formed. It's hard to tell because the thing sort of warped slightly as it was being built. I'm not sure if that's something I can cure with better cooling or lower the temperature of the filament. I'm not quite sure, but I mean, as you can see, it's reasonably formed. No major issues. It's very thin. It's reasonably strong as well. There's no delamination. I have actually tore sort of, I don't know, 10 centimeter section off it just to see how tough it was. So if you do squeeze it to a certain point, you will get one of the corners sort of split, and then from there you can just peel it off one layer. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. I think that's about it. Would I recommend this printer? Absolutely. In fact, I'm thinking about getting a larger one, possibly the CR10S or something like that. Seemed pretty good, and sort of stick with what you know, I guess. And this is, like I say, my first 3D printer, so I haven't got a whole lot to go on. But for somebody coming into it brand new, you know, never used Fusion 360 before, never used any of the slicing software, I sort of fumbled my way through quite well, and getting some reasonably good prints. The only other issue I'm having trouble with is the supports. The supports seem to stick really well, and if you've got something sort of just with really shallow supports, they're an absolute nightmare to get off. I don't know if that's something I can cure in the settings, you know, maybe under extrude the supports or something to make them sort of intrinsically weaker. I don't know, but like I say, I'm still learning. So, oh yeah, just going back to this. What I did notice is, like going back to the bottom layer issue, how it seems to be fused on the bottom layer. As it was printing, just the first. Can you just see that on the edge? Focus. It just sort of dips in the first few layers, and then everything after that's absolutely sort of plumb until you get to the top, and it sort of just bulges out just slightly. Nothing too major. It bulges out a little bit at the bottom, which is called, I think, elephant's foot. But yeah, then it sort of retracts in just for probably about 3 or 4 mil. And I don't know if that's sort of amplified on the inside as well, and that's why they're sticking down on the bottom half. But yeah, that's, like I say, for the most part, I'm happy with this. It's sort of a win fail, I guess. Yeah, I mean, just how sloppy the 3 is, and then you go down to the 2, and it's completely seized up. But then the 1 is a lot better. It seems to be stuck further down. So, and I think this model, I think on the actual description, the guy says he's made it so there's more of a tolerance to sort of combat the bottom layer issue, where you sort of, you know, everything molds into one. So, like I say, maybe there's just something in my settings that needs to be tweaked. I think the bottom layer comes out thicker or something, so I need to play around. But with being new to it, you don't know where to start half the time. So, hey ho, yeah. So cracking printer really, for the money. £169. I think it's on Amazon. It's gone up by £10, so it's £179 or something now. You can get it perhaps slightly cheaper if you're willing to wait and get it from China. But as always, I'm just completely impatient. Kind of want everything now. But yeah, I think for the money, it's great. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone. Of course, I've got nothing really to base that off, you know, against. Like say, oh well, it's not as good as this or it's good as that, but